So many junk mails. Hey Google, turn off. Hey everybody, how you doing? Well, I got some good news for you. If you are a medical marijuana card holder, you're going to want to stick around. But first, I'm Tom. You don't know me, but you might want to Google Tom Howard Marijuana. And every week, I give away 1 hour of my time to answer your cannabis industry questions. This week, we had a question about discrimination against medical marijuana card holders by their employers. So I dug into it. There's some pretty recent case law because medical marijuana is not that old, so you're pretty much only going to run into recent case law regarding the rights you may have as a medical marijuana card holder. So let's get to that. But first, thanks for tuning in. You know, it could really help me out. Now, I like you, man. I want you to do well. And if you like me and want me to do well, I think you need to, click the subscribe button. Maybe give us a thumbs up. Share this with somebody. Tag somebody who has a medical marijuana card that might be interested in it. And now, let's go somewhere else. Okay, first, I'm going to have to hit the cursor on that. But now I'm somewhere else. You see, we're previewing this new OBS software, and I'm still learning. But what about these new cases? They do say yes, and I was reviewing the Rhode Island case, the Christine Callahan case right over here, and, you know, it's not all that different from other cases. Cases all up and down New England, Massachusetts, Connecticut. Will Illinois follow? Perhaps. We'll talk about that in a bit. But first, here's what's grinding my gears. I'll tell you what's grinding my gears. I don't like how whether it's in legal opinions or in any media coverage, every time there's a story about cannabis, what do you have? A bad fucking pun. Now, this one does start off with the Beatles quote from 1967, "I get high with a little help from my friends." Cute. And then it goes on to talk about how it became lawful to sell Rocky Mountain High cannabis. And then he's going to have to wade into the weeds of the private rights and action, federal preemption, and all that. And then it actually gets into it. It does a wonderful job. And it really, really looks at analyzing what? It analyzes the statutes. Now, this is slide 3. I skipped over slide 2. Let's go back to slide 1, which is where I should have started with anyway. I don't know. Getting used to this new format. What is the difference between adult and medical use? Well, one is really protected by law. And a lot of these medical use statutes provide protections against discrimination for people solely on the basis of having their medical marijuana card. Simultaneously, a lot of these laws also provide protections for employers from maintaining a drug-free workplace. So that means that we have both rights. You have the right not to be discriminated against, but you also, as the employer, have the right to make sure that your workplace is drug-free. What if you just are in an adult use state? Why would you risk it? Why wouldn't you also, if you qualify with a debilitating medical condition, and pain is typically one of them, even coming to Illinois soon, why wouldn't you have a medical marijuana card just so that you could have the greatest amount of rights? Because adult use is entirely different than medical use. One is volitional, the other one you need. You need your medicine. You don't need to get high. A little help from your friends, according to the Beatles. But let's now talk about the federal preemption issue, especially when it comes to medical cannabis. It doesn't necessarily matter all that much. Why? Because Jefferson Beauregard Sessions doesn't have any federal money to prosecute the war on medical marijuana. And that case, which has fallen onto the floor, does go on to explain this defunding and say now it's not an outright repeal. They haven't dropped marijuana from the Controlled Substances Act, but it's indicative of Congress's intent to allow states to do what? And I say this a lot around here, and you'll hear me saying it when I'm defending states' rights for cannabis. You want the states to be the laboratory of democracy because of the dual type of sovereignty that we have set up between the states and the federal law. The states are more amenable, sorry about using that word by the way, to have laws that reflect the needs and interests of their citizens on a more localized level than the federal level, which is, basically 30,000 feet level that affects everybody, as opposed to everybody who lives in, let's say Utah. Therefore, was Judge, anybody? You there? Brandeis, very good, sir. I'm giving you a gold star for at least the next week. Hopefully you have some questions about the cannabis industry, and if you do, just drop it in the comments or find us on Facebook and DM us. Anyway, moving right along. The state laws were quite important in these cases. The courts went on to stress the actual statutory text of the case, of the state's laws. Now, Florida kind of sucks in many ways. One of the ways is that Florida couldn't just have medical marijuana until 60% of the voters voted for it. So it was kind of weird back in, I think it was 2012, when Florida lost its medical marijuana vote with 52% of the vote. And then even then, Florida goes on in its statute to really give employers a lot more rights than the medical marijuana card holders. Maybe they need to redraft it. Sometimes, and this might be what's coming for 2021, the uniform marijuana, let's get away from that word. Another thing that grinds my gears is the word marijuana relative to the word cannabis. We'll do that in another video. But for right now, maybe what's coming in 2021 is the Uniform Cannabis Regulation Act. For example, there are many uniform statutes that have a model, and then each state adopts one and makes small changes according to their rules. The most famous example is the UCC, the Uniform Commercial Code. In my practice, I use that all the time. I also use something called the UFTA, the Uniform Fraudulent Transfer Act. So it doesn't really stretch my imagination that much to believe that in a few years, after marijuana is maybe dropped from the Controlled Substances Act and there's a void for states, the states will turn to a uniform cannabis or marijuana, probably cannabis, Uniform Cannabis Regulation Act. And it would probably provide similar rights to the medical card holders, and it would also provide similar rights to the employers, where they're trying to have a fine line where everybody wins. The employers have the ability to run their business how they see fit. Meanwhile, it is illegal to discriminate against the medical card holders. And so what? So what, by the way? So what? Wonderful Miles Davis album. Or no, actually, the album, I believe, was Kind of Blue, and it started with So What? Hey, Google, play Kind of Blue by Miles Davis. Now,
sure, playing the album Kind of Blue on YouTube.
Listen to this and get to work. But remember, Miles Davis, the shit. The so what on this is if you want to have more rights as a legal cannabis user, it appears from the review of the statutes and the case law that medical card holders have greater rights than just regular adult use. And don't think that your employer is allowed to discriminate against you solely on the basis of you having a medical marijuana card. That doesn't mean you can use medical marijuana at work. It also doesn't mean that if you're in Florida, you are able to do anything. Oh yeah. Whenever I think of Florida, I just put on something cooler. Yeah. Anyway, that's my spiel for this time. If you liked it, please do click the subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up. Leave us a comment about your questions for the medical marijuana or the legal cannabis industry. That's right, because I'm Tom Howard. And you don't know it yet. But if you're in the industry, I like you, man. I want you to do well. I want to hear your story. If you have any questions about operating your legal marijuana business, you just shoot them my way.